Welcome to The Last Generation, the podcast where lived experience meets lasting change. I'm your host, Donna Simmons, author of Ashes to Flame, Transforming Trauma into Purpose, also a survivor, advocate, and truth teller. Welcome back to The Last Generation, Transforming Trauma into Purpose. Today, we're joined by someone whose life's work reflects a deep commitment to service, leadership, and lifting up women, and not just in her community, but around the world. Angela Brokman has been a proud member of the Zonta Club of Louisville since the year 2000. Over the years, she's held roles from club president to lieutenant governor, all while promoting women's empowerment through education and advocacy. Her passion for equity has taken her to global stages, from Hamburg, Germany to Brisbane, Australia, where she's spoken about the intersection of gender equality and climate change. Angela co-chairs the Zonta Says Now to Gender Equal Climate Change Committee, helping lead conversations on how the climate crisis impacts women and contributes to violence against them. Before her work with Zonta, Angela served our country as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Signal Corps, later continuing her service through the Veterans Administration. And today, she continues that spirit of purpose as a grief mentor with First Hour Grief Recovery and as a volunteer with Louisville's Office for Women, helping others heal and rise. I am honored to welcome Angela Brokman to the podcast, a woman whose story reminds us that leadership and compassion can and should exist side by side. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Donna. It's an honor to be here with you today.
It is such an honor to have you. You know, I've known you for a number of years, and we are Zontian sisters as well. Absolutely love the mission of Zonta. So yes, definitely appreciate you making time to be with us and lend us your expertise. So I'd like to start by asking, because I know, there's a lot going on with this current administration. And I think that looking at it through the lens of what we do with Zonta, trying to elevate women, making sure that women are empowered and that we're promoting equity for women, I see pretty much the antithesis of that with a lot of things that are happening under this current administration. And it's scary, to be honest, for me. So my initial question for you is, do you think women feel safer or more at risk under this administration, and why?
That is a very interesting question, because in my travels, it is really a split. There are those women that cater to the take care of me, it's all your decision mentality. When I have conversations with those ladies, it's very evident that they're not attuned to what's going on in the policy side. They are happy to walk around and just have faith that it's all going to be taken care of for them. And when I point out the vulnerabilities with that, I get pushback because they're not comfortable with the idea that me following blindly that my husband's going to take care of everything I need, it doesn't match for them. So that's the one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is there is so much coming so fast, and it is all so important. How do you make space for what do I deal with first? And my answer to that is you put it on the Ferris wheel. And It comes around, and it comes around because it's just like your garden. You have to plant the seeds, you nurture the ground, you plant, you grow, then months, sometimes years later, you harvest the benefits. And so a lot of our work is planting, nurturing, and growing that awareness, that involvement, the ownership that they can take, because so many women are going, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Start talking legislative action, it's like, how do you get involved? Well, the first thing I tell them is know who's running. And when you start trying to dig into that information, there's a lot of voids because a lot of that information is already catered to what label that individual comes on, and independent of the label, it's what are their values? What are they pushing? What are they saying? I am here because I want to see whatever it is accomplished. So you've got to know who's advocating on your behalf,
Mm-hmm.
what they are thinking and how they choose to advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And then how are you sharing that this person might be a good find? What do you know about it? And create those ongoing tabletop conversations about who have you heard about? Who have I heard about? How do we support these? What are the end goals that we have? And how are we making sure they're being accomplished?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think you made a lot of really interesting points, and I want to touch base on a couple of them really quickly because, I completely agree with you that we have to push to educate, right? We have to make sure that people know what's really at stake. I think a lot of times when people are looking at what political candidate they're going to be selecting, right, when they go to the polls, a lot of times they're looking for the candidate that is going to advance their own particular agenda. They don't really look outside the box. Maybe this family is in a position where they don't have a lot of needs that the family that lives 2 roads over does, right? And I think the challenge with that is that when we start looking at things from such an individualistic lens and only apply things to our specific lives, and we discard people that are different from us as being less than or hopeless or what have you, we're not really taking into account the bigger picture that comes to actually healing and empowering, because we have to start thinking of ourselves as a collective in order to really address the issues that impact us as well. We talk about wanting to mitigate crime. Well, people don't just wake up one day and say, I want to be a criminal, right? It has so many deep roots in trauma and generational trauma. And if we don't work to build that equity around sustainable resources to things like education and housing and nourishing foods, then ultimately we're perpetuating those cycles. So you can't finger point, right, to individuals. We have to be able to have leaders that recognize that holistic view of really healing communities as a whole to make things better for individuals as well as communities, because it takes all of us contributing. So, with that said, that kind of segues into another. Did you have something to add to
I
that?
was just going to say that parallels so much with the grief work I'm doing because we focus on sudden death.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we can, all of us walk around, we have our day planned, we have our week planned, we might have the month planned, we think but we don't realize we are one disaster away from everything crumbling. And
Right.
so being able to look at that bigger picture and say, I'm very fortunate I'm here on the path.
Mm-hmm.
But who all is behind me on the path, and what can I do to bring them up? And are those ahead of me on the path, are they giving me that hand down to help move me further up the path?
Right.
And that, like you said, until we understand that we are a community and we are all in this together. It's just like Ms. Magazine for their summer magazine was violence against women is a man's issue.
Yes. Yeah.
And until we can start and make sure that men have ownership in the, well, I have an anger issue. Yeah.
Mhm.
And a self-control issue and a processing issue. And we can peel apart a lot of issues on that item. But, how do we move forward and help engage and join all the gender to say what is right holistically for all of us, not just because I'm ahead of you in the line or you're ahead of me, but how do we as a community take care of each other and grow?
Yeah, exactly. And it's so important what you bring up. And I love what you said about Miss Magazine having, I guess it was a title or something, maybe of an article on the cover. Yeah, that's incredible.
Great article.
Because, yeah, I mean, we are all in whatever way, we issues for and with each other, right? Regardless of what our gender is, regardless of what our religion is. And we are dependent on each other as well as interdependent. And there is a way to be able to bring that full circle of autonomy and dependence and interdependence to the table when it comes to people working together. But so much of it can only be accomplished if we're willing to be self-reflective and look at our own wounds and look at what those wounds drive in our behaviors that cause harm to other people. And I think a lot of times, like with domestic violence as an example, we know that the majority of offenders in a domestic violence situation are men. Now, again, that's not 100% of the time, but it does make up the overwhelming majority. And so the question becomes, what is it within men that abuse women or that abuse their kids that is not healed, that is carrying forth that rage that they are acting out in their families? What experiences do they have that are continuing to that? And, carrying that back into this administration, we see a lot of this, very bravado mentality by several men that are now in significant positions of power as something to be celebrated. And, comments are made dismissing the impact of intimate partner violence. And when people see that, the role models that they have, the people that they are looking to for guidance, I'm sorry, in my very candid opinion, I think that these people in their positions of power are extremely missing a huge opportunity to be a positive influence because, again, in my very strong opinion, they are living out their own wounds without any self-accountability. And so with that, I think comes a lot of dangerous policies that happen too. There's the day-to-day interactions that we see, but then there's also dangerous policies that change. So what would you think the most dangerous policy impacting women specifically right now is? And maybe it's one that people really aren't even paying attention to.
Well, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. And when you have an organization that is trying to restructure and tear down and rebuild, you don't necessarily recognize when they pull a brick from here and a brick from there and then a brick from somewhere else, that they are structurally working to collapse the old norms as they work to frame the new norms in a more restricted value.
Right. Yeah.
And, some of the policies that come to mind is when you look at the Project 2025, what is their broader plan? Because as I have watched those pieces come to light, it has been, we're going to talk about reproductive health. And, if women aren't having those babies, it's that woman's fault. Well, going back to our work with Zonta, we just had a presentation, a think tank a week ago, and they were addressing that the sperm count in men due to plastics that we are all have in our bodies has dropped. Don't quote me on my number here, but a significant, like 64%. So it's like now when you start talking reproductive health, well, if you only make the reproductive health the woman's responsibility, and we aren't looking at what all of our plastic consumption is doing to the male's counterpart to fertilize that egg, then the policy's skewed. The policy is not about how do we promote healthy, growing families.
Mm-hmm.
It's how do we blame you for not being able to produce when, it may not be, it may be the swimmers. We don't know. So that's just one aspect when you start looking at what is the policy doing. When they shut down Roe v. Wade, that was a huge mark. And then it's like, how does that bigger picture fit into emergency care?
Mm-hmm.
And so now when you've got, I'm past child rearing ages, so I can look at that with a rear view mirror My daughter, who is in child rearing ages, is looking at it with, the headlights are on going, oh my God, what can I do? How do I protect myself? I know two ladies that had horrible experiences, month 6 of a pregnancy, go to the ER. Well, we used to be able to do this. Now we can't do that because policies have changed. But if you're not in that vein of needing or utilizing those services, you're unaware. You don't recognize what's going on. We talk about IVF. Well, IVF is very expensive. Are we going to have a lottery system for who gets it? I mean, how are we justifying that when we want healthy, vibrant children? So there's all kinds of issues within just that one slice. When you talk about how they are eliminating or defunding the Department of Labor, well, if you don't look for the information, you don't know what you don't know.
Right. Exactly.
So, I know when I was in the military, Signal Corps was made up of 33% women. And then after that, you had the ethnic breakdown of what were the ethnicities of each of the women within that group. So when you start looking at the Department of Labor, the U.S. has always been a melting pot. Why would we not want to support that melting pot? I take care of my pots and pans that I cook with. Why are we not, as a government, taking care of and raising everyone? And when you think about the people that fought hard to be able to come to this country for the hope of what was going to be offered. And you're now having that hit in the face with, we don't like you, go back. It's like, where's that? The Department of Education. Once again, if we dissolve the department, make it to each state's level, who has the affordability to decide, oh, I think I'm going to have kids, but I would rather live in Utah? How do you move? I mean, where's the job? So we aren't necessarily being aware of when we disassemble these programs. So Donna, I think one of the important aspects is the cumulative effect of all these changes on our policies could well undermine the years of progress we have already made.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And, it makes me think if the shoe was on the other foot, right? And if it was men's healthcare, men's education that were being restricted the way that women's healthcare and education are, how different might this national conversation be?
It would be so different. You think back to how easily men can get a prescription for Viagra.
Right.
But then if a woman wants to have contraceptives, well, we don't fund that. Oh, we don't do that. Oh, why are you doing that? Well, wait a minute. If they get the Let's Go Play pill, we can't have the Let's Protect Ourselves pill?
Right.
Where's the balance in that? So if it was truly approached equally, I think we would see a lot more of the bodily shift to personal choice, or from personal choice to political choice. And by that, it's like, if men experience the same limitations that women do, they would be extremely vocal on, what do you mean I had to wait? What do you mean I had to go there? What do you mean I have to get my wife's permission to get a vasectomy? What do you mean I have to? And so it's like, those are the opportunity conversations that allow you to bring up the disparities in the gender balance on just your health care. Men tend to challenge medical authority. When women challenge medical authority, we get the raised eyebrow and, are you challenging me? Most of my medical providers, no. If I'm going in and I've already checked my blood work, I know what questions I have, I love that. You're normal. But per this line, 1 point more, then I'm out of range. And what does that mean? And how can I bring my, don't tell me I'm normal today because I'm right on the edge. But those conversations with men tend to be very, very different. So if we were truly treated equally, I think more men would find out that, no, they don't want to be put in their place.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be able to have an open and honest conversation about what's going on. We would see the country standing up as a crisis for our civil liberties. We would
Yeah.
focus on, this is my body. If I want to have a vasectomy, I should be able to. This is my body. If I don't want to get pregnant, I should be able to. Two sides of the same coin, but it's applied very, very differently. Government has no place, my humble opinion, in medical decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That decision should be between the patient and the doctor.
Right.
And with the changes that have happened primarily for women and the reproductive cycles, that has been very, very different. We talk about cancer care.
Mm-hmm.
Women are stalled so many times on the exploration of, is this cancer?
Mm-hmm.
Put it off. Oh, well, go wait 10 weeks. Oh, well. But men get right in and get decisions made. And you're going, if you had to stand in line and do the same waiting game to get that diagnosis and that biopsy that I do,
Mm-hmm.
you would be making so much noise.
Absolutely.
Mental health.
Yes.
Women's mental health and men's mental health. Men get a lot of attention to their mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Women are told, you're just aging.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a problem. Take a pill. And it's like, we don't get back to root cause. We don't get back to, like we were talking with the violence. If a woman acts out and gets violent, we have to really do something about that. When a man acts out and gets violent, well, what'd you do to provoke him?
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, so those are all aspects of that. If it was truly blended and we could openly and address, here's the disparities on how women and men are treated in this scenario. Mm-hmm. And again, we can have the one-offs all day long, but the trends, it's amazing,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there are huge trends around it. And when you were talking about, especially around mental health, I think that a lot of times, even still in the year 2025, if a woman has mental health care needs, which I very much believe everybody on this planet has mental health care needs in one way or another, but for women, it's still labeled somewhere along the lines of hysteria, just as the stereotype was back in the 90s. And I know that culturally, there is a push right now that's gaining a lot of momentum, the whole trad wives movement, right? Like women wanting to step into these more traditional roles that were much more prevalent in the 1950s. And a lot of times it's said under the way of, this is what the gender norms are supposed to be. And of course, we know that that's perpetuated by a lot of evangelicals, right? By a lot of folks in this administration as well. And what I think people fail to take into consideration is that just looking at the 1950s as an example, that era had the highest suicide rates for women. And as women have been able to make progress and gain a sense of autonomy and have legislation line up to protect that autonomy, we've been able to make progress from there. Now, women still have a substantially high suicide rate as compared to others. And especially women in their 50s, which I find very interesting. I also think that that coincides with the fact that the average age of disclosure of sexual abuse is 52 for women. And again, I think it just reinforces the fact that it's all interconnected. If we have violence against women that starts when we're very young girls, and we're not able to achieve any sense of resilience or healing from that because we're told to be silent about it. We're told to not report it. We're told that nobody will believe us. So we have to hold this within and carry the shame that is not ours to carry, but it's what we're told we have to carry. And then we take that into our teenage years, and that makes us susceptible to being preyed upon by predators. But again, that's considered our fault, right? And then when we try to enter therapy and seek help for the trauma that we've endured, then that continues to be exploited. Or again, we're seen as being hysterical or non-functioning or crazy or what have you. And then you add on these added layers of taking away our freedom to manage our own health, whether that is by obtaining contraceptions, whether that is the freedom to choose to have an abortion based on whatever is driving that personal choice. To take all of that away and literally put it in the hands of men that have evidenced themselves as having a propensity for violence against women, it just feels like this endless cycle. It feels so hopeless to look at the state that we're in right now with that.
I so agree, Donna.
Hey, real quick, I've got something for you. If trust in your relationships has ever felt impossible, I know what it's like to want connection, but feel scared to let anyone in. And that's why I created the Trust Blueprint. It's a trauma-informed guide to help you rebuild trust, set boundaries, and show up fully in your relationships. And this isn't just for you. Supportive partners will learn how to meet you where you are with patience, compassion, and understanding. Real healing doesn't happen alone. It happens together. The Trust Blueprint. Rebuild trust, reconnect with love, and start feeling safe again. Visit traumatopurpose.com and click on the Self-Paced Learning tab to learn more and get your download today.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
And carrying that one step forward, when you start talking about women that have been raped.
Yeah.
And they make the decision to, I will carry this child, I will love this child, I will do everything I can to break the cycle. But now, what about the states that do not remove a rapist's parental rights?
Right.
So then, well, now I'm going to, she got pregnant. Yeah, I raped her, but she got pregnant. I don't like the way she's raising that child, so I want custody. I mean, the re-traumatization of that individual. And I don't think people, there again, if that's not a lane that you operate in, that you have hanging over your head, you're totally unaware of the laws of the state. The laws of the bill are still a country of laws, but it affects, and like you said, poo-poo is just a female versus the male. How do you break those generational ties?
Yeah.
The young people that come up in a very toxic home.
Right.
That's all they know. They don't know how to take a 3-second breath and count down to regain control.
Mm-hmm.
All they know is that violence, that outburst, and then the blaming for everyone else because they're not taking any ownership on their own behavior.
Right, exactly. And when that's not modeled to them, when they see, and, let's just use one example of a family where a dad is extremely volatile towards his wife, towards his children, and the kids grow up seeing that. They normalize it. They see that dad doesn't get in any trouble for anything, right? He's able to continue doing whatever it is he wants to do. Then that is the mentality they take on for themselves. And a lot of times it is a situation where young boys see that. They go on to develop those same patterns, or young girls see that and they seek out partners that have those same toxic behaviors. And it's so difficult to break the cycles of when that is your experience day in and day out in your family upbringing in your formative years.
Absolutely. And, the first critical piece is even being able to recognize your patterns.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
you don't realize you set that up because that is your comfort zone, even though that is your miserable place.
Right.
I'm miserable here. I know how to live in this.
Yeah.
Oh, this isn't anything new. And it's like, but you can have so much more.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
all that self-doubting and all of that. And then you've got all the social media. It's your fault. You didn't. Why didn't you? Why did you dress like that? Well, why are those dresses allowed to be sold? I mean, it's just a snowball. And it is so hard to peel apart because it is so complicated.
It is. It is. There's so much chaos to try to weed through. With that chaos, it just feels like a wall of noise sometimes that washes over us. And when you're a kid, and even when you're a young woman and you're stepping out into the world for the first time on your own, it becomes this overwhelming sense of, damn, is there anything I can do that's getting it right? And what does getting it right really look like? Because we are so conditioned to believe that there is one right path. And even I know that we've spent some time talking about the differences between how men are treated and the expectations around men versus women, especially in this current political climate. But I would go so far as to even say on a deeper level, it's if you check the specific boxes that have been ascribed by a lot of our current leaders about what a true man should look like, which again, it is still stripping away the autonomy. It's like they want to position themselves as the ultimate authority and the ultimate source of power on dictating how everybody should be. Because if you don't adhere to that, then, well, you need to be controlled. You need to be dominated, right? Because you're challenging the ultimate authority. And we don't question that. We don't do that. And a lot of people buy into that. And I think when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people probably wouldn't admit this. Several that follow that mentality and like the whole red pill movement that's being made too, a lot of people, especially women that will follow that mentality, I think at least on a subconscious level, it's an issue of safety because they have been conditioned that they have to be submissive. They have to go along with what is said. The only way they're going to speak out about something is if it is in favor of their husband's messaging, right? Because it comes down to safety. They don't feel that they have the autonomy to go out and get a decent paying job on their own to be able to live independently. They are fearful that if they leave a toxic marriage, then they're going to be shunned by their community and by members of their church, right? And so for a perceived sense of safety, they perpetuate these harms in their own families and pass it right down to their kids.
And it's interesting because even if you didn't have a toxic, chaotic relationship, in my work with First Hour Grief and Recovery, a lot of my older women have never, ever lived on their own. They went from dad and mom's house to the marriage house. And bless their hearts, they made it 65 years. And now they are facing the first time how to live alone, how to live with myself, and the women that subrogated so much to the husband, I think about how exhausting that poor man must have been shouldering all of that, where if we could actually work on a marriage as a partnership.
Right.
My husband and I, when he was alive, every 6 months, we traded the checkbook.
Yeah.
I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to transpose numbers. Guess what? So are you.
Yeah.
My husband was a wonderfully nurturing. I mean, he followed me in the Army and was the stay-home dad for a while,
Yeah,
and it was like
yeah.
oh, you let her wear the pants in the family? He goes, yeah, and she gets to run every morning too. Funny. But, it was like the shaming he had for the fact that we were able to sustain ourselves on a one income, and I was the breadwinner. I always outranked him. I always made more money. But when it came to our home, we left those spirits at the door.
Mhm.
We were a joint partnership, and getting back into how do you have a joint healthy partnership? How do we teach that to the kids? If a man is struggling, shouldering all the weight of being the 100% decision maker, how much of that feeds into the anger and the outbursts?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Because of the stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we look at the number of single women households, I believe currently outnumber joint households.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you look at the way these women are handling that stress level.
Mm-hmm.
How many men are in a men only household where
Right.
they have the kids? And again, let me tell you, my experience in the work I do, they aren't prepared. They didn't understand how much their wife carried,
Mm-hmm.
even though it was women's work, but just keeping up with what's the school project? What's the meal for the night? Do we have the clean clothes? How the hell do you do that hair? Just all those little things that I got to figure it out. Hello, Pinterest, whatever.
Right.
But if we can equalize that, I think we can do a lot to turn our country around into approaching that we're humans first.
Yeah.
Thrived in is secondary.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are honestly be humankind and be both, be human and be kind, because you never know what someone else is struggling with, irregardless of the happy face.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, I think from a stress management standpoint as well, a lot of times, and I know the word empathy has become a bad word in a lot of circles. And I completely disagree with that. I think empathy is often misunderstood. And I also think that it is one of the most innate traits that we have as humans when we are not acting out from a place of our own wounds. And I think that in order for us to really be able to be good, nurturing parents of either gender, we have to be able to have that empathy and pour that into our kids and teach them how to be empathetic with each other.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with healthy competition to a certain extent, but not everything has to be a competition. We can teach our kids to find a balance of putting their best foot forward while still ensuring that their community is loved and supported. And if every individual can start doing the right thing, that is how communities heal and how these cycles get broke. So, we've talked a lot about the status of women's rights right now. And so I'm curious, what do we do from here? What do you think women need to do today to be able to reclaim their power and protect their rights?
That would be a path down the individual route to start with. What powers do you think you have?
Mm-hmm.
And what powers do you find your void in?
Yeah.
And I know with my recovery work with grief, we talk a lot about how do you open up a void? Because we're very good at building our castles around and protecting that hole.
Mm-hmm.
But, if we want to move forward, we've got to know, are we exercising our right to vote? And do we know who we're voting on?
Right.
And like I said, not being in a childbearing age, healthcare or maternity care isn't necessarily my forefront go-to I need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But I have grandkids or I have children that are still childbearing years. So it does strike a chord with me. Getting men to look and favor that as to what's really right.
Mm-hmm.
As women, I read a book many, many years ago. It was called Talking 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting book about the fact that we women are raising these boys.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we telling them, buck up, man up, don't cry, don't feel that emotion, don't do that? Because we're setting them up to have those blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you have a grief loss,
Mm-hmm.
I have to deassemble that loss barrier and
Right.
help them go deal with the flood of emotions.
Yeah.
Because as you know, anytime you have protected a wound
Yeah.
and it hasn't healed,
Yeah.
it's full of a lot of things you really don't want to have to dredge back out.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And it doesn't come through a filter. If we have built up the capacity to be able to experience intense emotions in a way that has resilience around it, then when those big, intense emotions come up, they may very well be debilitating for a day, right? But we're able to experience them, let them wash out, and then replenish ourselves. If you don't have that resilience, if you don't have that capacity established for you, it's a flood and it can consume you for months, for years. There's like no end in sight to it because you haven't been taught the coping skills to be able to be self led and to self manage and to find the balance between these physiological reactions that you have to stress and the mental weight that drives that.
My next issue on that would be financial independence.
Yes.
We have got to look at the disparity between pay between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my time, I was in the federal government. You could go to any bus stop and pull up the pay chart and see man or woman, it didn't matter. You got paid the same. But when you're on the economy side of life and you're competing for every dollar, I hate to say it, but the assumption is this is the price range posted, but we can knock 20 grand a year off that because it's female applying.
Yeah.
Oh, look what we do to our bottom line.
Yeah.
And so for women to recover from any disaster, and that's where the climate piece really hit home, was we're already behind the 8 ball on our financial equality.
Mm-hmm.
And then you lose your house to a tornado, or you get wiped out for a flood, or there was a fire. Your hill is so much steeper to climb back. And it's that financial independence. And if you've had a lot of time in your life where you were spent being the primary childcare, or maybe you're doing elder care, you're working in an unpaid, unacknowledged care provider role,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, once again, you're just behind the ball, and it is so hard to regain that financial independence. So really getting that piece put together as early as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some of the women I've worked with, I said, it doesn't matter if it's only $10 a month.
Yeah.
It's $120 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And, it's those little bits. It's never, I'm going to wait and win the lottery, but it's those little bitty steps that pay dividends so much. And then practicing self-advocacy.
Yes. Yeah.
Learn how to slow it down just a bit, process your information. And if somebody starts talking over you, give them the 1 finger minute. Excuse me, I need a little longer to process that before I open my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Mm-hmm.
want to be fair to you for the answer I'm looking for.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And most people tend to not get to the real question until 5 questions down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've wasted a lot of collateral doing 5 questions that are throwaway questions. You've got to really hone in on what's the point I'm advocating for, and how whomever I'm dealing with, speaking with,
Mm-hmm.
what's the best way I can help them feel safe in correctly answering.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
comes back to that safety piece. Women
Exactly.
tend to not step up, not ask the questions, and I tell people all the time, it's just a question.
Mm-hmm.
You have to worry about my reaction to the question. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And if I do, you can call me on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But It's just a question.
Right.
If you don't know, it's okay to say, I need to think on that. I really don't have that information.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
it validates me that was a darn good question.
Yeah, exactly.
So the voting, the financial independence, and practicing self-advocacy would be the three big points that I would say we women need to learn to appreciate, embrace, and carry forward.
Yes. Oh, goodness. I completely agree with everything that you said. That's very, very powerful statement. I love how you summarized that. To add to that as well, I think that it is a very reasonable expectation that as we are self-advocating, that the men in our lives that see the damage at the helm of what we are entering right now stand up and start advocating as well. Because just as we advocate within our families as women, we advocate for our children, we advocate for our spouses, we advocate for the schools that our children attend, for things happening in our community. We need good, truly strong men to stand up, come forth, and vocalize that they see this too, and present themselves as the truth strength that they carry, and not let this vision of what a strong man looks like be tainted by people that are obsessed with power and control. We need the truly good men that are leaders to step forward and show everyone what a true nurturing man looks like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know when I was working with some of the UN programs on the He for She program, and it became very evident that the men that want to speak up and protect and challenge, they are put down just as fast for their safety. I mean, locker room talk. Well, if there's 5 guys batting around doing the locker room talk and you want to be the one man to stand up and say, this is really inappropriate and I find it offensive, his safety's being questioned. I mean, and so we women have not done a very effective or efficient job at ensuring men have an avenue to speak out. I know I approach men all the time just in conversation because I'm trying to get them engaged in the bills that are coming forth in the House and the Senate. And do you know how this is going to affect your granddaughter? Do you know how this is going to affect your niece? Are you your grandpa? Oh, so you're a girl grandpa. You can open those up and you can say, do you realize they're taking away Title IX or the changes they're doing to Title IX?
Right.
What's Title IX?
Yeah.
And so when you're able as a woman to be able to have that conversation with a man, non-threatening, just as an educational opportunity, they are shocked when they go, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. So meet them where they are, find out where the women are in their families and where they feel their women need help and support. And there's plenty of issues on the table. You can engage them. You can get them bucked up to say, my voice counts too.
Yeah.
But it's that educational process. It's gaining them to say, it's not we and they.
Yeah.
It is us.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
If I'm not healthy, nobody in the house is healthy because mama's got to get well first.
Right.
Dad's not healthy. No one in the house is healthy. Dad has to get healthy first. And getting that joint health of respect and honoring what we each bring to the table so that we can have healthy, productive, encouraging lives together.
Exactly. Exactly. Well said. Angela, thank you so much. As I said, you are absolutely phenomenal. It has been such a pleasure to have known you for as many years as I have and to have seen firsthand the impact of your work. I really appreciate you being a guest on today's show.
Thank you, Donna. I'm available anytime.
Great. Well, we would love to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. As we close this conversation, I want to leave you with a thought. Control doesn't always start with laws or policies. Sometimes it begins in the mind and how we're taught to view ourselves, our worth, and even our emotions. When women are told to toughen up, move on, or stop being so emotional, What we're really being told is to disconnect from our bodies, our intuition, and our empathy. And that disconnection is where both personal and societal harms begin. In our next episode, we're going to unpack that. We'll talk about how empathy has been mischaracterized as weakness, when in truth, it's one of the most powerful tools for healing, connection, and change. We will explore the neuroscience of empathy, why it's essential to mental health, and how reclaiming it can help us rebuild trust in ourselves and in each other. Because the erosion of freedom doesn't just happen through control of the body. It happens through suppression of the human heart. Join me next time on The Last Generation, Transforming Trauma into Purpose, where we redefine empathy not as fragility, but as strength in its truest form. You've been listening to The Last Generation, Transforming Trauma into Purpose. For more resources, visit traumatopurpose.com. If this episode resonated with you, consider leaving a review and joining the community online. Subscribe, and let's transform together.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.